Testing, good, because I think it helps record. We have to record our classes on Zoom and then make the recording available on Cyber Campus. So that's just what we have to do from now on. And so even if everybody's here for the class, we still have to we still have to use Zoom. And that's cool, that's great, because you know, we record the session and we put it on Cyber Campus and we never lose it. And students that missed the class can go look at it. Oh, that reminds me. So now I also have to remember that I have to open up not only my Gmail account, I also have to open up Cyber Campus, because we need to do Cyber Campus to how do I open up a new huh? Okay. Yeah, just Control T. Go to here, and hopefully I can open up my Cyber Campus. And where do I go to Cyber Campus? Here? I want to open up Cyber Campus. Here? Hey, all right. See how this works? Collaborative learning. So what is my ID? I think it's this. Because I want to use I want to use smart attendance, right? Yay! All right. So I have to open up two of these, and it's 10 o'clock. All right, attendance. Woo! All right, so we go add here smart attendance, and so you're all. So there's your smart attendance number 340. So please go on your computers and type in the smart attendance, and hopefully then I won't have to worry about that again. I'll just let that run. That's another reason why you should bring your computers, because you know we have to do we have to do attendance for the class. So okay, and let me see if I can do this without collapsing something or causing something to break. So I'm still being recorded, I assume, and I already opened that up. All right, so welcome to European Politics and Society, and may you live in interesting times. I was told as a Chinese curse. If I wanted to curse you, wish you bad luck, to say, may you live in interesting times. And we are now living in interesting times. With the coronavirus pandemic and all of the consequences of that pandemic. Those consequences include I'm thinking how to put it in terms of what United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres said about climate change. He said climate change, global climate change, multiplies crises and accelerates crises. It accelerates crises and multiplies crises. And the same is true for the coronavirus pandemic. It accelerates and multiplies social crises. Okay, and so, like, for example, crises that already, problems and contradictions and polarizations within society become even more intense and more heated. Conflicts within societies become more intense than they already were because of the acceleration of change which the COVID-19 pandemic is speeding up, is accelerating. How do media reports talk about the global pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic? They say it is a catalyst. You know what a catalyst is? Any of you in chemistry? A catalyst is speeds up, accelerates the pace of chemical reactions. The COVID-19 is speeding up trends that were already in place. If we were already doing electronic, digital, online teaching here at Catholic University of Korea, then what happened with the pandemic? What would have taken 5 years or 10 years happens in 1 year. Plans that universities, companies, people have had to do things over the next 5 years, 10 years, happen now in 1 year. That's how it's typically described. Plans that your business or organization had to carry out long-term plans over 10 years, they happen in 1 year. We're never going back to the old way. I told you, we have to do this forever from now on when we teach here at Catholic University. We have to go online and record these presentations and put them on Cyber Campus. That might have happened maybe 5 years, 10 years from now. Now it's required. So the pandemic is a catalyst. The pandemic is an accelerant, which is like a catalyst. The pandemic is like you know, when you play tape recordings, you push the fast forward button on the tape recording to go fast forward, or on a computer to fast forward. It's like one big fast forward button. So, and the point I'm trying to make is that the pace of change, the rate, the speed of change in society, in economics, in politics, in business, in social and cultural relations, is accelerating, going faster and faster and faster. That's what it means when we say global climate change and the pandemic are accelerants, are multipliers and intensifiers of crises, because crises happen when there's conflict between people. And there's conflict between people when you have something and I have something, and I see that what I have is coming under threat. My position, my status, my wealth, my money, and it's coming under threat from somewhere else, from something else, from you. You threaten me, you threaten me. Somebody, I think, is challenging me, threatening me. It might be the company here, the university might have budget problems. So they might say, we need to cut our faculty because we don't have enough money. Maybe they were thinking that, then all of a sudden they have to act because of the crisis, right? That's another way the media describes the COVID-19 pandemic and global climate change. It compels action. It makes you do things. You might be thinking, maybe I'll do this, maybe not. Let's talk about it some more. Let's do it over 10. No, we got to do it, and we have to do it now. So why is that important for this class? Because nationalism appears as a behavior pattern in countries like Germany, United States, China, Russia, Korea. When the pace of social change accelerates, when the pace of change, when the rate of change within society accelerates, nationalism emerges. And remember, we said the biggest challenge to peace in Europe is nationalism. World War II was the world conflict around nationalism. Think about what you know about World War II. The incredible crimes, the genocide by the Japanese, by the Germans, the horrible suffering, and the psychological collective behavior of groups of people and individuals to make themselves do those horrible things, to let themselves do those horrible things. That's all nationalism. I mean, Germans are good people. They gave us Beethoven and Mozart and Hegel and Immanuel Kant and great artists, and they gave us Hitler and the Nazis. Yes. Nationalism. And if the Germans can do that, so can the Americans, so can the French, so can the British, so can the Chinese. And of course, as you know, so can the Japanese. And so when we say the European Union is a peace strategy for Europe, is a peace strategy for the world, it has to deal with nationalism. It has to deal with nationalism. And it's being challenged now because of the global pandemic and the crises. It is multiplying and intensifying. The worst economic situation since the 1930s, for example. That wasn't expected a year ago. Or maybe it was a year, maybe not 18 months ago or 14 months ago. And the political consequences of that, the heightened level, the increasing level within society in America, in Germany, in France of anxiety, fear, stress, and people's falling back to nationalism to explain the source of our problems. Our problems are that we're tied to the European Union. The European Union is too slow in approving vaccines. The British saying, yeah, we're great. We left the European Union and we approved the vaccines on December 8th. And you Europeans are just getting around to vaccinating people. Where we're already almost 20% of British people vaccinated, you Europeans are at 3 or 4%. Ha 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 ha! Britain is great. Britain is great. Ha 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 ha! Nationalism is ugly. Nationalism is ugly. I know, and you know. Okay, so you are living in interesting times when we have nationalism, when we have globalization, when we have nuclear weapons. And so the European Union is a peace strategy for Europe after 2 world wars. And so we have to talk, as I mentioned in the last class, we have to talk about nationalism, and we have to talk about the book and the notes I sent you in the book in terms of how the material in that book, discussing and focusing on Europeanization of Germany, Italy, France, of Britain, Poland, of Greece, of Spain. Those are all the country case studies in the book, those countries I just met. Bulgaria, too, where I spent 15 years in Bulgaria. I worked there for 15 years before coming here. Those chapters and the material in the book focuses on the impact of the European Union on nationalistic countries like France, like Germany. I'm not saying that they're always nationalistic, but nationalism is an intense motivation in Germany, in France, in Italy, in Poland, that sometimes is important and sometimes not. Sometimes it sleeps. It's not salient. Nationalism is an intense value in Poland, an intense collective political motivation in Poland, but sometimes it sleeps. And other times it wakes up and it becomes, the word is salient. Salient, right? Salient. Nationalism is intense in Poland. Intense and salient. So, nationalism. I have most of this written down, so I'm not going to spend too much time writing on the whiteboard. I have it in the files to show you. And nationalism in Poland or Bulgaria becomes intense, now becomes salient, when the rate of change accelerates in response to tremendous stresses like the COVID-19 pandemic. And so the book and the material in the book is written by many people. Each chapter in the book is written by a different author. There's two chapters that are written by the editors, Bulmer and Lekesny, Simon Bulner and Christian Lekesny. They write chapter 1, and I think they write the conclusion. The other chapters are written by different authors for Poland, for France, for Germany, for Bulgaria. And you can tell, when you read those chapters, I can tell that the person that wrote the chapter for France, he's French. So his English is different from my English. The person who wrote the chapter for Germany, I can tell he's German. And his English shows he's German. The person that wrote the chapter for Poland, they're not Polish, or at least they might be Polish, but they were born and raised in England or something, because their English is not like Polish English. Bulgarian was written by somebody who's Bulgarian, I can tell. The chapter on Greece is written by Greeks who've learned English. Okay? So you're going to also experience that as you read those chapters. What's it like when a French person who's very smart and is fluent in English, but writes in English, but they're French, their English is different. Just like a German's English is different. And you'll get a sense of that in the book. And the Spanish chapter as well. So there's many different authors in the book. And so they were given instructions by the editors of the chapters, Simon Bulmer and Christian Lekesny, to talk about Europeanization, top-down, European Union, Europeanizing the member states, Bulgaria, Poland, Spain, France, Germany, Britain, and also Europeanization from the bottom up. How does Poland affect the rest of the European Union? How does Germany affect the rest of the European Union? How has France affected the evolution and development of the European Union? And they're going to focus, and that's the instructions that these authors were given by the editors. And this is the third edition of the book. So they've done this 3 times. And since you have many different authors, you can't have instructions that are very, very specific. The point I'm trying to get to is that they're studying these, offering analysis of Bulgaria, Poland, France, Germany, Greece, Spain, focusing on common instructions. And those instructions that they received were to discuss how the institutions of Spain, Germany, France, Poland have changed, have evolved, have developed in interacting with the European Union. So there's lots of detail about how, for example, the Polish government developed its parliamentary committees to oversee the Polish government's negotiations with the European Union institutions. So they formed this committee, and then, and the Spanish chapter. It goes into so much detail. How the Spanish governments from 1984 until the present changed the name of this cabinet committee and this cabinet's office advising the prime minister to this name, and then they moved it over here, and they moved it over there, and then they moved it down here, and then they moved it up here. And it's all details about the evolution of the institutions. And they talk about the parties, the political parties in Spain, in France, in Germany, how they have evolved and changed in the European Union environment. Okay? So it's focusing on institutions, and it's very descriptive. It's detailed descriptive. Now, I've been studying these chapters, and I'm writing them. So, okay. Let me talk about how we're going to do the grading in the class. the class will involve papers. I'm not going to ask you to memorize how the Spanish Cortes, the Spanish Parliament, changed and modified its committees within the Spanish Parliament for monitoring Spain government negotiation with the European Union from 1984 till today. You don't need to memorize that. It's not that kind of tests. They are midterm and take-home papers. Also, we're a small class, right? So I don't have to worry about grading curve, right? So I can work more closely with you to give you all good grades if you deserve it. And I told you, it's a problem in political science in general, in terms of understanding nationalism. I'm all about nationalism. I love studying nationalism because I was fortunate to have a great professor who's been dead for almost 25 years now, who gave me the theory of nationalism I use. And I think I've got the theory. I've got something useful that I can use. And when I read the textbook that you're using, these guys and women, I get a sense that they really don't know how to deal with nationalism. They know it's important, but they don't have a way to formally understand it. They say, there's a growing sense of, or there is a different view in Britain regarding World War II. These are all statements about nationalism, but they don't really know. They know it's important, but they don't really know how to understand it. Nationalism, from my point of view, is not an ideology. It's not a philosophy. It's a behavior that human beings show, Homo sapiens, that we show because we have a genetic tendency when we're afraid, when we're anxiety-ridden, because the world has become more unpredictable, when the pace of change accelerates, to form in-groups. We come together as groups and against an out-group, an enemy, a scapegoat. The Jews, the Japanese, the Chinese, the African Americans. Find an enemy. Scapegoat, scapegoat, scapegoat. It's something in our, not maybe you, not maybe me, but generally speaking, human beings have a predisposition in their DNA to want to form in-groups. That we are, fist bump, in-group against the out-group, bad out-group. And to simplify and stereotype our perception of the bad guy so that we can hate him or her or them and kill them. Think of the horrible things that nationalists do. World War II, genocidal violence. And it's not just World War II, it happened in Yugoslavia when I was there in Bulgaria. Incredible things in the 1990s when you were born. Mass systematic rape, like they're chimpanzees, right? Like kill the other males and inseminate their women. Put my genes in the women. Take the women, spread my genes, rape them, make them mine. I mean, it's something animalistic. We're animals with big overdeveloped forebrains. So I can fight and kill for Germany, for China, for America. This imagined huge, huge community that can be as small as Iceland, 300,000 people, to as big as China, 1.3 billion. That makes us different from chimpanzees. This back here is pretty much not changed. This is what makes us different, the forebrain. Symbols, abstractions, China, Korea, America, they only exist here. This is the only place Korea exists, or America, or China, or Catholic University of Korea. It exists only here. And we get emotional about those things. I love America, my homeland, and I will kill anybody who threatens it, who degrades it, who degenerates it, like those socialist Black Lives Matter people. Hate them, hate them. Nationalism, stereotyping, and emotion all go together. They all associate. And so that's what the textbook is attempting to deal with. But if you're a European Union leader, what are you going to do? What else do you have but institutions to work with? So of course they're going to focus on institutions. Of course they're going to try to implement peace in Europe by modifying and developing institutions. They really can't do anything else. If you're a policymaker in government, if you're a government official, if you're a politician, you can try to destroy those institutions like Donald Trump did, encouraging his mob to go attack the Congress, or you can try to build new ones like the European Union leaders do. You can destroy or you can try to build. And if you succeed in building, over the years, people's motivations and their identities can change. Can we build a European identity that's stronger than German, British, French, Polish, Greek, Bulgarian, Spanish identity? In 50 years, 100 years from now? Identities change. Like I said, France exists here. And you know France exists here because lots of people say, yeah, I'm French. And they act like French. But they didn't act that way 1,000 years ago. Not 1,000 years ago, they did not. They acted like peasants 1,000 years ago. They knew only their village 1,000 years ago. They didn't know what France was. These illiterate, poverty-stricken, suffering peasants living in villages. They knew their village and they knew their priest. And they knew their Lord in that big castle over there with his armor and swords, who would take 1/3 of my rice or corn or wheat. That's what they knew. They didn't know what France was. They couldn't read or write. The Lord, he can read. He knows how to write. He knows how to, as we say in English, cast a spell. You know, to spell a word. How do you spell Ben? B-E-N. I'm a stupid peasant. He's got magical powers. Oh, he's going to cast a spell. That's an English American slang, right? To cast a spell. So 1,000 years ago, those people did not know what France was. Now most people do know what France is. Will they somehow also come to feel in their emotion what Europe is as number one? They still be French, but will they ever become most strongly European? That's what I'm working on. That's my work that I try to write papers about. How do you build a European identity? So Because that's the challenge for overcoming nationalism. And it's not going away. I mean, if you had told me 10 years ago, asked me, Professor Ben, is somebody going to leave the European Union? Is a country going to leave the European Union? If you asked me that in 2011, I would have said, oh, no, I can't. No. Britain left. That's not supposed to happen. It happened. Donald Trump became president. It happened. He sent a mob to attack the US Congress that could have turned out in different ways if some of those policemen in that Congress had pulled out their guns and shot more people. Who knows what condition we would be in today if there was a massacre. So I'm telling you these things because I want to get you excited. I want you to get excited about reading the book, trying to understand what these people in the book, these authors of the different chapters are trying to do in the book. How can the European Union bring peace to Europe that has seen tens of millions of people die in the 20th century and are still dying today in Ukraine? 1 or 2 soldiers every week are killed in Ukraine between Russian nationalists and Ukrainian nationalists fighting over the same piece of territory in eastern Ukraine. 1 or 2 soldiers a day die. 14,000 dead so far in the last 7 years. In Europe. Between Azerbaijan and Armenia. Armenians claim that they're Europeans. They just fought a war, killed thousands of people a couple of months ago, right? Armenians insist, we're European. Yeah. We're as European as anybody else. We were the first ancient kingdom to accept Christian religion as the official religion of the empire, of our kingdom in 300 AD. Yeah, we're European. People are still dying in Europe, in Ukraine, and Caucasus, if you consider Caucasus part of Europe. So, let me, here's some material from YouTube, right? You can see, I gotta figure out how to do this when I need 2 hands to do some of, see this, I don't know if I checked this link, does it show people dying in Ukraine? Let's see what comes up. Sometimes I don't think I've checked on this link, but now see, oh, you're too young. Does it say you have to be 19? Yeah, they've started moderating because they don't want you to. Sometimes they don't want you to see bloody, nasty scenes on YouTube. But this is just a burned out tank from Ukrainian war. Just to show you, evidence of people dying in Europe. And where's the volume? I just want to figure out how the volume. Yeah, burning the Ukrainian flag. This is Russian territory. I'm just trying to figure out how this works so that. Okay, just to show you, that's going on today in Europe. Okay, and again, also I wanted to highlight these the claim that the European Union is a model for the rest of the world, for you in Asia and other places, that the European Union has been successful, and so to bring peace to Asia, to bring peace to other parts of the world, we should model and copy and adapt the European Union lessons to East Asia, right? And so you see here, just to show you. Oh, by the way, I got this notification here. The World Congress of the Korean Political Science Association is happening this summer. It happens every 2 years, that the Korean Political Science Association every 2 years has a World Congress. And so this notification came out, and the deadline for submitting proposals for papers is the end of next month. And I just wanted to mention that there is always, I always go to this, and there is always a big Polish delegation. There's always a big group of Polish professors that show up at this World Congress every 2 years here in Seoul. No, it's not always in Seoul, but in Korea. And I think it's because there's a big Korean investment in Poland. I can't remember which company is invested in Poland, but Korea is invested in Poland. And so the Poles are interested in Korea. And so there's always a big Polish group of professors, a significant group that come and attend this event. And so just to show you that, here is McGill University is in Canada. Just to show you references to the European Union and power of weakness, a pipe dream of East Asian Union. This is from 6 years ago. Of course, again, highlighting the discussion about how we need to create an East Asian Union. And so there you see Park Geun-hye and Abe Shinzo and Xi Jinping. And so you can, read it just to show you the discussions about always ongoing about, can we create a European, an Asian Union? And evidently the most successful in moving in that direction has not been Korea and Japan and China. It's been ASEAN countries, Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia. They also include Myanmar and Thailand and Cambodia and Laos. And one of the reasons why I think European ASEAN has been more successful in moving forward with creating integration is because those countries are not like Japan. They're not like China. They're not like Korea. They are post-colonial countries. They are not nation states. Nation states are like Poland. Nation states are like France. Nation states are like Germany. Nation states are like Italy. Nation states are like Greece. Everybody, not everybody, but almost everybody who lives in Poland feels like they're Polish. And that's number one. People who live in Indonesia. Okay, I'm a citizen of Indonesia. Yay, Indonesia. But I'm a Muslim, or I'm a Christian, or I belong to different groups within Indonesia. Those are multi-ethnic countries formed by the former empires of Europe. The Dutch, the Americans, the Spanish, the British, the French, drew those borders between Malaysia and Indonesia. You imagine in your mind, those wild, weird, strange borders. Who drew those borders? It wasn't the Indonesians. It was the British, it was the French, it was the Spanish, it was the Portuguese, it was the Dutch, not the Filipinos. So those countries have less of a problem with nationalism, is what I'm getting to, because they're not like Germany, they're not like France, they're not like Poland. Poland is near perfect ideal nation state. 95% of people who live in Poland feel, number one, I am Polish. But like Macedonia, right next door to Bulgaria where I was close to the border with Macedonia. 1/3 of the population in Macedonia feel Albanian, they're Muslim. The other 2/3 are Slavs, some are Turks, some are gypsies. It's a multi-ethnic country. So again, nationalism is the problem. And so, you know, it's easier. Politically, in some ways, it's easier for these countries to integrate. There are some exceptions. Like, as far as I know, Vietnam is a nation state. That's why they defeated the Americans in the Vietnam War. The power of nationalism. But not Myanmar. Myanmar is 2/3 Pamar. Pamar is the main ethnic group. So it's closer to being a nation state, but still 1/3 of the population is not Pamar. It's not Bamar. Burma, Bamar, right? You've got Kachins, you've got other groups, Rohingya, and Philippines also. Thailand is closer. Malaysia, I mean, it's a mix of different groups. The point is, nationalism is less of a challenge for integrating those countries than it is in Europe. Because European states, the big ones, Poland, Bulgaria, not Poland, France, they're nation states. They show nationalism. Here's another one. Say again. East Asian Union, European Union, the sequel, Northeast Asia Union. And this is, again, also from, well, this is an old one. And so there's more and more of that discussion, always ongoing. I showed you those pictures of Hatoyama, former prime minister, advocating an East Asian community. Again, modeled because of the European Union, modeled on the European Union. So as you're reading the detailed information in those chapters, think to yourself, can we do this ever in Asia? Can we ever cooperate and Asianize Japan and Korea and China the way the Europeans Europeanize their executive government offices and their parliaments and their parties? Always keep that in mind as you read the chapters. Can we do this in some way in Asia? Okay, so Europeanization is the transfer of national sovereignty to the European Union. That's one way to define. And all of these files I will post on Cyber Campus. So although I'm not writing them on the whiteboard, they're here and they will be on Cyber Campus. Okay, and nationalism is the greatest political challenge to peace and international relations. It's not the only one, but it is the major one. And what is the theme of this course? It's the challenges in the Europeanization of the EU member states. And it's a task that each country is addressing. But you're going to see, as you read the chapters, that Europeanization is something which the leaders of Europe promote. It's not something that the people of Europe are demanding. We, the French people, demand European integration. No, no, no. It is something which the leaders of Europe are promoting. And that's why they're surprised when suddenly the mass of the population, inspired by demagogues, political entrepreneurs, ambitious people, see an opportunity. I, Nigel Farage of Britain, will mobilize the suspicious people of Britain against the threat to their nation from too many people coming to Britain from Poland and Romania and Bulgaria, and now through Germany, coming from Syria and Afghanistan and other countries and North. Oh, I will exploit their fear and anxiety to become a great political figure and take Britain out of the European Union. And the book, as you read the book, you're reading about leaders of Britain, leaders of France, leaders of Germany, leaders of Spain, leaders of Poland, leaders of Bulgaria, leading this effort to integrate their countries into European institutions. But the mass of the population, they are not part of this ongoing, intensive initiative. They're being pulled along. They're being dragged along. And increasingly, they are resisting because there are other political figures in all countries, in Britain, in the United States, in Russia, in China, who will always exploit that fear and anxiety that people have about why are all of these people who are not Britain coming to live in my country? Because of the free movement of labor as a fundamental principle of the European common market. People from all over the European Union can go anywhere to get a job in the European Union. And if I'm a British worker who's not very well educated, who can't speak French or Italian, who doesn't have a college degree, I'm going to be afraid that these Polish people are going to come and take my job. While young, highly educated British people who can speak French or Spanish, they're all excited about European integration. I can travel all over Europe, take vacations, get jobs, make a lot of money. I like Europe. And those people are the main base of support for Europeanization, but they're not the majority of the people in these countries. They're not the mass public. So, okay. All right. Some basic definitions. A nation state, like Poland, like France, is a state in which the overwhelming majority of citizens show their self-identification with the territorial community within the state, favoring that community, that in-group, above any other group. Favoring means willing to sacrifice other values, like economic values, for the sovereignty of the nation. And Europe is dominated by nation states. Okay, so a nationalist is an individual who sees himself or herself as a member of a large group of people who constitute a community that is entitled to independent statehood and is willing to grant that community a primary and the primary terminal loyalty. Nationalism characterizes a community when the modal politically attentive citizen is a nationalist. That's a nation state. If your typical citizen is a nationalist, that state will act nationalistically. So what does it mean to act nationalistically? Well, let me tell you. I know this is kind of hard. I know, it's hard to listen to me speak off so much, but hey, where's the poll at? Polls here? This? And this one? Okay. And so I'm going to look at my other polls here. So my question to you is, can Korea and Japan lead Asian integration to create an Asian Union the way Franco-German leaders and leadership cooperation leads European integration? If we're going to have the European lessons apply to Asia, one of the major points about European integration is that the leading force behind it is German-French cooperation. France and Germany are committed to making this work. At least the leaders of France and Germany until this time, because as I told you, Emmanuel Macron, president of France, he's coming up for re-election next year. And it's not clear he's going to win. And his main opponent will be a French version of Donald Trump, a French version of Nigel Farage, Marine Le Pen. She's a hard right populist nationalist who says the European Union is a threat to France. I mentioned that Professor Shepley, she said, I couldn't believe she said this a month ago. She said she thinks Le Pen is more likely to win. Marine Le Pen of the National Rally. She's discussed in the chapter on France. But until now, the main driving force of European integration, one of the main forces is this commitment of Paris and Berlin, or Paris and Germany when it was under, West Germany, Bonn, between Germany and France leadership to make this work and to drive it forward. Forward, forward, forward. We have a problem with European integration. What is the answer? More integration. Not less, even more. Always go forward. The term, the metaphor they use is like riding a bike. You can't stop. You're riding a European integration bicycle. You can't stop integrating. If you stop, follow. So you're pushing forward with European integration. The nationalists are challenging you. You're getting lots of opposition. Let's create a European cold steel community. Yeah. Hey, it worked. Well, let's create a European defense community. Just 2 years later, three years later, 1954. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. And then the French National Assembly says, are you crazy? We're not going to integrate the French army with the German army 9 years after World War II. Are you nuts, you crazy leaders? You want to integrate the French army and the West German army? Just 9 years after we were occupied by the Germans? After all the death and destruction of the Germans caused us, you want to integrate the French and German army? What are you, nuts? They rejected the European defense community. We're going to fall. Don't float out, move in some other direction. And they move off their bicycle, their European integration bicycle, in another direction. They say, okay, no more military stuff. That didn't work. We'll focus now on, just focus on economics. More economic integration. Don't stop cycling. You run to this area, keep going this way, but don't stop. Don't ever stop. Don't ever stop. If you stop, it's a disaster. It's nationalism. The COVID-19 pandemic. Can we all act the way we want to act to solve the problem? Get the Russian Sputnik 5 vaccine. Get the Sinopharma Coronavac Chinese vaccine. Get it here now. No. Or do we all act together to address these problems? You can't stop. If you stop, you fall over. And so now, since that book was written, you see the European Union moving more towards more integrated and becoming more effective like the United States of Europe, like the United States of America. The book doesn't talk about that. But the European Union is not going to borrow hundreds of billions of dollars. Ask the European Union. United States. You go forward or you go backward. You can't stand still. It's either forward or backward. Forward or backward. You can't stand still. And we know what the backward was like. World War II. This is like people are dying as we speak in Europe and Ukraine. So, if Franco-German cooperation is the key, can Korea and Japan lead Asian integration? They're both democracies, Japan and Korea. They're both developed. One of the countries is divided, the way Germany was divided. Korea is divided. Please answer this. So I have to kick it off, right? This is our first in-class poll, so see how this works. So answer that, please. And it should go 1 minute, right? That's the. And so it's all. I don't know if I made it anonymous or not. Sometimes I can make them anonymous. Sometimes not. It doesn't really matter to me. But it looks like the nose or head.
I think you're.
Huh? Is that, there's how many people class?
I think there are six.
There's only 6 people here. Okay.
Oh, but
So
there's
that's it.
seven on Zoom.
Oh, is somebody maybe accessing from outside the classroom? Okay, well, I guess I'll stop then. Click this button. Okay. So, of course, you know, my next question is, why does most people in the class think no? Why no?
Sean from Germany, they all closed up to all the war crimes, they punished by people.
Yeah, right. I mean, I showed you that picture of Hatoyama, bowing former prime minister, not when he was prime minister, and after his political career was done. He comes to Seoul, and he goes to Shanghai in China, and he bows down and begs for forgiveness. When, in the case of Germany, Willy Brandt was the prime minister, the chancellor of Germany, when he fell on his knees in Warsaw. Remember the picture I showed you? The Germans have always been saying, we're sorry, we did bad things. It's our national shame. Oh my God, we'll give money to the Jews and to Israel. We are so sorry, yes, we are. And of course, the Japanese have not acted the same way, right? Germany had a lot of reasons to act like that, right? They were divided by the Soviet Union and the United States. There were hundreds of thousands of Soviet Russian soldiers and American soldiers and British and French soldiers ready to fight World War III on German territory with nuclear weapons. So that's a theme in the book. When you read the book on Germany, right? Germany after World War II was committed to making this work. Germany could not thrive. Germany could not prosper. Germany could not rebuild without being committed to Europeanization. They had to Europeanize to be allowed to be a nation state in Europe. So Germany after World War II, post-war Germany and European integration are almost the same thing. Modern Germany emerged because of Europeanization. Japan hasn't experienced what Germany has experienced after 1945. So, okay. And we close. What is the next one here? Well, Okay, so let me, so what else? I have some other things to show you to interact more. But when we think about Europe, we think about democracy. When we think about Europe, we think about being modern and developed and democratic. And those three terms, those three words, modern, democratic, and developed, supposedly they all go together, right? But supposedly Hungary is no longer a democratic country. Hungary joined the European Union after communism collapsed. And as I showed you at the last class, Freedom House says Hungary is no longer a democracy, at least not like Korea is a democracy, at least not like how France and Germany are democracies. And so we see the European Union struggling to deal with Hungarian nationalism emerging to support reactionary leaders. See, nationalism can be nice and sweet and happy when nationalism is fighting imperial control, right? In the 1989 Berlin Wall collapse, Polish nationalism, Hungarian nationalism, what did they want for Poland and Hungary in 1989? If I'm a Polish leader leading Polish resistance, what did I want for Poland? And this is 1989 when communism was still in place. I wanted freedom. I wanted democracy. We want freedom and democracy for Poland, which is under control by this brutal, corrupt, foreign communist party that the Soviet Union put on us. It's an occupying force. It's brutal. It's foreign. It's imperialistic. It's corrupt. It's a dictatorship. We Polish people, we want freedom. We want democracy. We want economic independence. Yay! So there you see Hungarian nationalism and Korean and Polish nationalism associating with democracy and capitalism, democratic values and capitalist values. Now, 30 years later, Hungary, led by this man, Viktor Orban, he was the leader. He was a student like you in 1989, leading the struggle against communism in Hungary, in favor of democracy, in favor of the West, in favor of Hungary returning to Europe, in favor of Hungary becoming a modern, democratic, and developed country. And now he's a dictator. He's my age, and he's turned the other way. He's still a nationalist, but now we don't want too much democracy because you liberal Democrats think we should have gay rights and LGBTQ and we should not punish the communists for the crimes they committed serving that evil Soviet Moscow imperialist occupier. You say, oh, let's forget the past. Let's forgive each other. Let's look forward. Let's put a thick black line against history and not have vengeance and justice against the traitors that collaborated with Moscow. No. Say, no. It's time for somebody to pay a price. Now, you're not going to read about Hungary in the book, but you read about Poland. And the authoritarian tendency government in Poland, they want the people that were communists to pay a price. Those collaborators, those Polish Czynilpa, you know what a Czynilpa is, right? Czynilpa? You want those Polish Czynilpa to pay a price for their treason. Because you know why? Those Polish Czynilpa, those collaborators with the Soviet Union, their sons and daughters, because that's a long time ago, 30 years ago, they're the best business people. They're the most successful, rich people in Poland and in Bulgaria and in Hungary. Because daddy and mommy were communists who collaborated with the Soviet Union. They got all of the benefits. They joined the Communist Party and they were allowed to go study in London and Paris. the children of these Chinilpa were allowed to go get all of the opportunities, polish their English and their French to make it so good. Like you Koreans focus so much in studying foreign languages and English because if you know English, it's a key to unlocking a great career. You had to belong to the Communist Party in Poland if you're going to be allowed to go study in London under communism. And you make all the right friends and meet all the future bankers and business people and politicians. And in 2021, who are the best, most successful, richest business people? The sons and daughters of the traders. Meanwhile, me or my father, who was in solidarity or in the church, the Catholic Church, fighting against communism, we could not go study in London. We could not get all of those opportunities. And so my English isn't very good. I didn't make all those friends in Paris and in London and in Chicago. No. And so guess what? I'm also still not doing very well. And my children are not doing very well. But the children of the communists are still on top. It's time for justice. Justice, law and justice. Prawo I Sprawiedliwość, Law and Justice Party. It's time for a little justice. And so we don't want too much democracy. We don't want too much tolerance. We don't want too much tolerance because that's what liberal values mean. Tolerance. You're different from me, I'm different from you, and I respect your human rights and you respect mine. But let's not have too much tolerance. You Koreans understand this. You understand this. I already talked about in the other class last semester, right? Under President in 2009, the Korean government passed a law to take the property from the children of the Chinilpa, take the land and wealth from the children, descendants of the Chinilpa. 100 million pounds worth of property were confiscated by the president. Moon Jae-in was his chief of staff. What was his name? Yeah. Under his government, they passed a law to confiscate, to take the money and land of the descendants of the people who collaborated with the Japanese. You understand what these people feel. You feel it. That's what they feel. These former communists, they're still on top. Under democracy. It's time for a little vengeance, you know? A little vengeance never hurt anybody. Well, let's put it in different terms. It's time for a little social justice. It's time for a little equity. That's a popular term in the United States, equity. It's time for a little equity. A little equity! That's it. You can't understand politics unless you understand emotion. You can't understand emotion unless you understand nationalism. I love Korea. I love my people. I love Poland. I love Hungary. And still those traitors who degraded Poland are still, their children are still at the top of the elite. And it's not fair. And the courts in the European Union are protecting them. The European Union is the one insisting, let's forget about communism. Let's put that all behind us. Let's not talk about who did bad. Let's not do that anymore. No, let's talk about it, these people say. Let's talk about who did what under Stalinism. Let's talk about who killed whom, who tortured whom, who informed on whom from 1945 until 1989. Let's talk about it. Let's not ignore it. We have to talk about it. But the European Union doesn't want to talk about it because they're afraid of nationalism. They're afraid of prison camps, arrests, violence. And they've always known this. I mean, when I was a student in graduate school, my professor said there's a significant potential for an authoritarian populist regimes in these countries, fascist regimes in these countries, based upon it's time to punish those people that were traitors to our nation and left this disaster that's here today. Tremendous corruption, poverty. I mean, when I went to Poland in 1989, right, I went to Poland on scholarship to do research, and I met these economists at the economics department at the University of Warsaw. And I got a sense, and other people tell me the same thing. Polish people are an angry people. They're angry. And they're angry because they think they are one of the great nations of Europe, equal to the Spanish, equal to the Italians, equal to the Germans, equal to the French. And they have been abused and betrayed by France or the United States or Britain or the Soviets or the Germans. They pointed out to me, I remember they said, at the end of World War II, Spain and Poland were about the same in terms of size of population and economic development. Spain had been destroyed by the Spanish Civil War in the late 1930s. Hundreds of thousands of people dead. Poland had been invaded and destroyed. And then in 1989, Spain's in the European Union, and Poland is this corrupt, poverty-stricken, desperate country. Look how history and the Europeans have treated us. Poland's income, economic income on average, was half that of Spain in 1989. Half of Spain's income. I mean, they would say that to me. So, and it's not just in Hungary. You see the rise of the far right in Germany, and the claim is in Poland and in Hungary, it's the judiciary, it's the judges, the court system in Hungary, the court system in Poland that is protecting these former communists in the name of human rights. And that's why they want to take control of the Hungarian courts. And the nationalists in Poland want to take control over the Polish courts and end judicial independence because they think these courts are protecting these traitors. These courts that were first set up under the communists, under the communist regimes. When the communist regimes collapsed, the courts are still there, the judges are still there, that the communists put in place. You know, you read about or hear about how Chinese courts work in China, right? There's a Chinese judge who sits in the court, and you're before the court, and then you're the Communist Party official, and you whisper in my ear, you say, "Court judge, find me guilty." And I become a judge because I obey, I'm a communist, and I know I listen to you because you're the Communist Party. You tell me he's guilty. The court finds you guilty. Those kind of judges in communist Poland, in communist Hungary, and they were still there. They stayed in their jobs after the communist regime ended. Now, that's 1989. Today is 2021. That's 33 years ago, 32 years ago. But they claim that those communist era judges, before they retired, they looked for new judges to replace them. Like, I'm going to retire. Who do I like? I like people like me. That's who I like. I think I'm a good judge. You. I'm your dad. You was your communist too. I'm going to make you. I'm going to hire you as a medium judge. Red spiders, you know, spiders. Red spiders
was 32 years ago, but the influence of communism is still there. Never cut out the cancer of communism. You never cut it out of us. We need to cut it out. We need strong leadership. Creators understand that. Children are still powerful and rich. We're still rich and powerful in Korea. And it's not fair. It's not good for Korea. You understand in your heart. See, Americans don't understand this because they've never experienced this. They've never occupied anyone else. They occupied Indians. They occupied other people, but they've never been occupied by the Japanese or the Soviets or they've never experienced that. They don't know what that's like. You know what it's like. And how it makes people crazy. I mean, Japan had a big influence here. At the same time, you can't talk about it. You get upset. It's all like this in Eastern Europe. And the European Union knows that. So the point is that the European People's Party, the main conservative party in the European Parliament, is expelling Viktor Orban's members from the European People's Party in the European Parliament. They can't work with Viktor Orban, Fidesz party. He's the Prime Minister of Hungary. They can't work with his people in the European Parliament because the European Fidesz party, the Hungarian Fidesz party, is anti-democratic. And so they expelled his members of the European Parliament from their parliamentary group. Ooh. As Orban has eliminated the independence of Hungary's judiciary and much of its media, targeted civil society groups, stifled dissent and pushed back refugees from war-torn Syria, pressure grew within the European People's Party to ostracize him. It's symbolic, and so they say it's because Hungary is no longer a democracy. And they blame Angela Merkel when she, as Prime Minister of Germany, she was cooperating with Viktor Orban's party to get the Hungarians to cooperate with Germany in European Union policymaking. So, please respond to the following statement. If Hungary is no longer democracy, then Europeanization has failed. Do you strongly agree, disagree, strongly disagree? Because the book is all about Europeanization. If Hungary is no longer a democracy, because Viktor Orban has taken control of the media, he's had his big, rich, crony allies buy and take control of the newspapers, the television stations, the radio stations. He's taken control over the courts in terms of putting people on the courts if he likes. European Union, the Freedom House says this is no longer a democracy, democratic country. Has Europeanization failed? Europeanization is about being modern, democratic, and prosperous. What do you think? We have 7 responses. And so why do you disagree? I mean, if you're going to disagree, then it seems you have to tell me what you understand Europeanization to really be most importantly focused on. What is most important about Europeanization?
There's the whole trend of I feel like a room. I feel like this also shows the other panel in the whole European past. Like in America, where Trump came up, he
the European Union is trying to encourage the Hungarians to do with Viktor Orban what the Americans did with Donald Trump. Say, no, go away. But again, I mean, I think, you know, you're really emphasizing an important point that also is important for the book. People who observe what's going on in the United States, in Europe, like the authors of the textbook, you're right, the authors of your chapters, they are having trouble understanding what democracy means. And this implies in Hungary that somehow Hungary is bad, but the United States had Trump in power. Was Trump any different? He was just as bad as Viktor Orban. I mean, think about what Donald Trump, and keep in mind, the United States, in European thinking, in world thinking, the model of democracy and capitalism is the United States. It's the most powerful country in the world. It is the most powerful country in the world because it's, in part because it's democratic and capitalist. It is Trump. Donald Trump became president. He was a fascist. He is a fascist. He wanted to be a fascist. He wanted to be a dictator. He tried to keep power. He failed because of opposition within the government, in the Congress, and others. But you know what? If the pandemic had not happened, if SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19 had not happened, I think he would have won the election. And this is the United States. Donald Trump is the American Mussolini. So is Hungary really so bad? I mean, Freedom House said, oh, Hungary is no longer a democracy. Well, I mean, it's got its problems, but it's not as bad as it could be. I haven't heard or read about the Hungarian government or the Polish government killing journalists, putting people in jail, using fear and coercion to control them. Like in China, in Russia, will torture you. That's not happening in Hungary. It's not happening in Poland. That wasn't happening in the United States under Trump. Yeah. Something I always like to remind myself. The situation is bad. The situation now in Korea, the US, Russia is bad, but it can always be worse. And Hungary is moving in a bad direction, but it's not like Turkey's Korea. You have special prosecutors arresting people and torturing them and killing them in Hungary. You don't have it in Poland. It's not like Russia, where journalists die, where dissidents get poisoned. It's not like that. Yet. Can we stop it? Can we try to influence politics in Hungary and trends in politics there so they go in a better direction? We'll try. How? Through institutions, through the European Parliament and the European People's Party. Because that's how we have to use the word politicians and government officials. Institutions. Institutions. So Europeanization, you know, we're a small group, so I think what I'm going to do in the future, I'm going to try to encourage everybody to speak, to practice your English. So I'm going to flip a coin in the future to choose somebody to talk. Okay? So, because since we're a small group, we can give everybody an opportunity. Remember, Viktor Orban, he wins elections. You can say, well, he wins elections because he cheats. Well, he kind of cheats, but Donald Trump, He had all sorts of supporters in Fox News. I don't know how different America is from what's going on in Poland. I don't think it's very different from what's going on in Poland and Hungary. So let's talk about, and then of course, at the same time you have these other things happening in Hungary and Poland and US. Roger Cohen, he's a big pro-European Union writer for the New York Times. He's saying Europe is moving in a federal direction. At the same time, you have strong support for Viktor Orban, Fidesz party in Hungary, and the Law and Justice Party in Poland. These people win elections. They win elections in Poland. Donald Trump won an election. At the same time that is happening, you also see Europe institutions moving in a federalist direction, a United States and Europe direction. With Britain leaving the European Union, he highlights how the European Union, prodded by Brexit, facing the coronavirus pandemic and confronting hostility which Trump has done things previously unimaginable. It is taking steps in a quasi-federal direction. It's moving forward with more innovation to meet the pandemic crisis, to borrow up to $1 trillion. Like the U.S. government borrows so much by selling bonds, the European Commission is selling bonds to borrow hundreds of billions of dollars to give to Italy, Hungary, Poland, Spain, Greece, to stimulate the economy. It's looking more and more like the United States and Europe. At the same time, you can see the rise of Marine Le Pen and Viktor Orban and Law and Justice Party. It's like two separate sets of trends, more integration and more nationalism. And they collide and go off. So we'll see how this develops over the next few years. I think there's a hope that if the economy recovers, that Marine Le Pen and Law and Justice Party and Viktor Orban will go away. They'll go away because the people want to support them. I'm not so certain. Nationalism is powerful. It's always going to be an issue. Even in the case of Brexit, Britain leaving, there's a whole chapter in the book about Britain. The authors of the book think that's really important. You have to have a chapter on Britain. Because what does Brexit mean? What does it really mean for Britain, the United Kingdom, to officially leave the European Union? Are they no longer going to be integrated with Europe? What does integration mean? What is integration? I mean, Britain still does have its business and trade with Europe. It's still part of NATO. It's still a close ally with the United States. The United States might make an FTA with Britain and European Union. FTA, you know what FTA is, right? Will that mean that Britain and US and Europe will all be integrated under a transatlantic trade and investment partnership, TTIP, like a TTP, like an FTA with South Korea. There's talk of that. And there's no concrete answer to these questions. When you read the book, the author is kind of like, they don't really, they keep a very minimum definition of Europeanization. They call it the pooling of sovereignties. Europeanization means I'm France, you are Hungary, you are Germany, and we agree that I officially allow you to have a voice in my affairs. And you officially agree to allow me, as another country in the European Union, to have a voice in your affairs. That's what Europeanization we all agree that when we act in making policies for our countries, that we officially agree you have the right to say something about what's going on in my country, about my policies. That I have to cooperate and coordinate and communicate with you. And you have to cooperate and coordinate officially with me. And we all agree. Because we signed the treaties of the European Union. That's what Europeanization means. Britain has said we're no longer going to officially agree to that. But are they going to do it unofficially? How can they not do it unofficially? When half of their trade with the rest of the world is with Europe. So let's look at the notes. And that's right. I have to quit here recording Zoom because it takes a long time to download the recording. So here's chapter 2, and of course this is me. When you see these kind of brackets, those are my commentaries in the notes. So and I want to just highlight something else here. Yeah, I think I already. Definition. To share, pooling is to share something such as money, ideas, equipment, etc. with a group of people, especially so that they can work more effectively together. It seems sensible for us to pool our resources. To pool. Europeanization is primarily about national governments legally agreeing to pool their respective national sovereignties in deciding their respective governments' policies. Do you strongly agree, disagree? Oh. So do you agree that Europeanization is primarily about national governments legally agreeing to pool their respective national sovereignties? Remember, a nationalist wants to defend the sovereignty of the nation. A nationalist wants a state that's independent from control by other countries. That's what sovereignty is. So Europeanization is primarily about national governments legally agreeing to pool their respective national sovereignties in deciding what their respective governments' policies are. Please vote. Are you voting? Six more, 5 more, 4 more. One more. One more. We'll finish it 1 minute when it hits 1 minute. Well, I tell you, that is how they are defining Europeanization on a broad, basic, minimal level. Europeanization is ultimately based on the foundation, a legal foundation, that we all agree as members of the European Union by signing the treaties that for my government of Poland, for my government of Italy, for my government of Spain to do something in any policy area, I communicate with my Spanish citizens. We have elections, we debate and discuss, but I also agree that I have to talk to you and you as other countries in the European Union in order for my policy to be legitimate and my government to be acceptable and legitimate. And of course, there are a lot of people in France, Poland, Hungary who don't like that. Those are the nationalists. Those are the nationalists. And they are everywhere. And they are very powerful. And they're becoming more and more salient. Becoming more and more salient everywhere. In France, United States and China.
And so back to the notes in the limited time remaining. The meaning of a member state is complex. You can always copy paste this into translation. So by systematically investigating this concept of member state, the meaning of state transformation in Europe is approached. What does Europeanization mean? European integration is a process that involves reconfiguration of the meaning of being a state in Europe, rather than overcoming or transcending states. It means what I just told you, that being a state in Europe means not only do I have to get my people, my citizens to support me, you have to support me as well as the other member countries of the European Union. You have the right to interfere in my internal affairs. You have the right, and I accept you have the right to do that. That's what Europeanization is based on. So this chapter ultimately subsequently analyzes the function of the member states at the European Union level. The EU has a complex multi-level structure, but the EU member states remain an essential focus in the EU's operations. So you need to use the power of the state in Europe to drive forward and push forward integration. And you need to deal with nationalism. You say what Emmanuel Macron says. Why do we like the European Union? Because screw the European Union. Little France, with 60 million people, is a great power in the world. Why? Because of the European Union. So French citizens love the European Union. You must support the European Union, because through the European Union, France is great again, like it used to be before it was defeated in World War II. The European Union is the way by which France is great in the world. France cannot be great in the world by itself, with China, with the United States, with Germany next door. So you need the power of the state, even as you try to transcend the power of the state. You need the state in Europe as building blocks to build something more than the sum of the parts. If you're going to construct Europe, you construct Europe using the states as the blocks to create something that is bigger and better than each individual part. So you have a paradox. A paradox. You must use the power of the state, which relies upon nationalism, to build something that transcends the state. Europe. And you know what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have to stop this. I'm going to have to stop the Zoom. So click here, and then click here.